right, what's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 339. One more than the last one that we put out, because that's how counting works. My name's Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts, and as always, I'm here with
Ron
and John. And you know what my first episode was episode 39. So technically, it's been 300 episodes for me. Even though we know it's been more than that with all the little bonuses and stuff.
Wow. It's a lot of episodes.
Congratulations, John.
Yeah, it feels good.
And no surprise to anybody who listens to this podcast, we're coming in hot today with a lot of Marvel conversation.
Yeah.
So much Marvel.
I feel like whether it's on your Disney Plus subscription or whether it's in your multiplex, your local theater, whatever you want to call it, Marvel's kind of covered.
I call it my church, Steve.
Your church. Okay. Well, I forgot. You're the cinephile of the group. Yes, my apologies, right. Mr. Walker. Yeah, Marvel's everywhere right now, which is no surprise, but we're going to catch up with the completion of the first season of Moon Knight on Disney Plus. And we've all seen Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So we're going to talk about that too. We're going to have a little section of that where we talk a little spoilers, so you'll be warned before we go into that. And then we'll end the show with some recommendations of some other stuff we've watched since we've talked to everyone. I mean, we've been gone for a few weeks. Stuff comes up, but we've had lots of time to watch some stuff. So we'll throw some other recommendations in there towards the end of the episode. Real quick, have you guys seen any trailers before we get into Moon Knight? Have you seen any trailers that you wanted to mention for good or for bad? I know there's been a bunch that came out over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, man.
If you have something, throw it out there. If you want to put anybody onto the.
I saw a trailer for a little known franchise called Avatar, Avatar 2.
The Way of the Water or the Way of Water?
Yeah. The Way of Ass, because that trailer was ass. It was just so all over the place, bland. I didn't see we've been waiting years to see this new technology or whatever. It looks exactly the same as the other one. The trailer had almost no talking in it. I kind of wanted to hear some voices. Maybe I hear some.
I think there's like one line of dialogue.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's earned after a decade of not existing in our pop culture kind of atmosphere.
Right.
But I'll see it. I'll see it. But I wasn't impressed. But it had a lot of views.
I feel like it's the sort of trailer that you see and you go, okay, yeah, like that's what that looks like. That's what Avatar looks like. I can imagine that maybe there will be some eye-popping visuals. I do think even within the trailer, there's a few images that are like, okay, my little nerdy, inner child that used to like to look at those like calendars or paintings on the covers of sci-fi books or whatever, interesting landscapes. And I don't know. I feel like there is an appreciation for that kind of, just that kind of boundless imagination, creating everything, all the plant life, all the animal life. It's all been created. It's all being rendered. I think when you say bland, there is something kind of, it feels like if someone was showing me this and saying, look at this cinematic trailer for this video game that everybody's talking about. It's an open world. I would say, oh, yeah, I could see how that would be fun to splash around in. But as a movie, I do agree that it's like, I don't think it was ever for me. I knew some people really liked it, though, so I've never really commented too much on the Avatar phenomenon because it's never been my favorite thing. But I do sense that there's this weird, it's almost like I have no awareness of the people that are truly excited about the idea of more Avatar. I think there are people out there that would probably squeal with delight when they saw this trailer. Yeah. I just don't know them, and I don't know that I've heard them or seen any evidence of them, but I can't imagine that they've gotten this far with something this huge, and especially with it being James Cameron. I mean, they're going to make their money back. He's going to somehow this is going to be huge, right? And I just don't get it. Is that, you know what I'm saying? Is it like I'm just not aware of the anticipation and the demand for this? Because it's not like they lost a step. It looks like it ever did. So if you loved it before, it's even more Avatar.
It's more of that. Right. Yeah, I mean, I feel like.
Do you know who loves it?
I mean, I definitely know people in the social media world that I follow that definitely bang the drum for Avatar. But personally, maybe a couple people, in my life that really I know genuinely love Avatar. I don't know that they've been, what is it? How long has it been? Like 13 years or
Has it been
14
that long?
years?
Wow. Yeah.
It's like 2008 or 9, I think, when the first one came out. But
Wow.
because I was reading an article that it was saying like there's only like 2 or 3 years difference in terms of the span between Avatar 1 and 2, and they were likening it to the time between Return of the Jedi and Phantom Menace, like in terms of the gap. Just because they were talking about the time between some of these movies.
Like the time.
So it's Avatar this year, and then they were also talking about Top Gun Maverick coming out this summer, and that's like 36 years or something between Top Gun coming out.
Yeah.
But wow. I mean, there's definitely, people that love Avatar. There really are. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of them because of where it places in, movie history. And I mean, honestly, like the trailer comes out, or the teaser, officially, this is the teaser, comes out. And, after it completes its first cycle, I feel like they said that it's like the number 2 most viewed trailer. I forget what the stat was. I forget what the number 1 was.
I saw that.
But it was like the number 2 among something.
Yeah.
Which whatever the number is, just in terms of like a placement, the fact that there's that much want to see it, at least see the teaser. I mean, yeah, it tells you something. I mean, the movie's going to be some kind of successful. I just don't know on what scope, especially considering, what they've said about the movies as kind of being their like kind of standalone movies where there's a beginning, a middle, of an end. It's a part of a bigger saga, but like, it's not going to be some big cliffhanger between movie and movie. And that they've made all these movies at the same time and they kind of have them queued up now. So, I mean, I'm curious to see it. I definitely feel the same that you described, Ronald, after watching the teaser. I mean, I can't wait to see more of the water stuff, like the underwater, because that's kind of what they've been promoting in terms of the progress with the technology that he's developed and the way they shoot water or action underwater. But I don't know. The trailer didn't really do a lot for me either. I will say this is a weird thing. So the movie Avatar, whatever. I'm fine with it. I don't love it. I don't like long to watch it again. But I will say that as much as I go to Disney Disney World in Orlando, at Animal Kingdom, the Avatar ride, Pandora's Flight that they have, is one of the best rides I've ever ridden in my life. Wow. It has made me like the movie more. And if that's like a weird thing to say, but it's an accomplishment in terms of them making a ride experience that not only, gives those who love it what they want, but I mean, can maybe, like myself, it does kind of make me more interested in seeing it again or seeing more of that world, because the ride itself is like one of those, 3D, you're on something, you're on the back of one of these banshees, and like and the way it's almost like you're sitting on like a motorbike a little bit, but you're really sitting on them and holding them, but you can it breathes, like you can feel like them breathing on your body. Wow, and the 3D, and it's got this massive screen, and they pump in scents to make it smell like the ocean and the forest. It's astounding what that ride is. It's amazing. Yeah. And it really did make me like rethink my want to see more of it. And after you ride it, I'm just like, yeah, I'd like to see more of what they could do with this world, because they did, like John said, it really is a realized new thing, like in that respect, even if you don't love the movie.
There's a couple things that are happening. So I agree with you. I think that whole thing has kind of kept Avatar in people's minds. Then they're releasing a 4K version of Avatar, so people can look at it digitally and physical copies of like the way that the movie was intended to look. There's a video game coming out of Avatar, so like the ride, the 4K release of the movie, and then the video game feel like 3 things, and that's just 3 things that come to my mind, fresh off my mind, the top of my head, that are going to promote this movie. I have a theory. I don't think this is going to I don't think it's going to do well here, but I think that because internationally it's just going to go out everywhere, and people just kind of love American movies, I think it's going to reach the $1 billion mark, but not because of us. That's my theory.
Right.
Or it's going to be the same, people repeat viewing something because they're huge fans of it, which we know is like a Cameron thing that happened with Titanic. It happened, you know what I mean? Where if a certain slice of the audience, if you still have that whoever the people were that made the first one a huge hit, you know, they're still presumably buying tickets to movies. So I mean, again, I think we're all sort of saying, well, this is going to be huge. We just don't know exactly what it is yet. But I also think that as fans of movies, you have to be a little bit interested in what James Cameron has been working on for years. You know,
Totally.
Whatever you think of his movies, he might push the technology forward in some significant way. But if all we're talking about at this point, and I mean, I think this is where people get a little bit like eye-rolly about it, the technology piece.
Yeah,
you can see the difference if you're looking at it on a giant screen and you're seeing the resolution. You know, you can see the difference, but we haven't really complained about not enough information before. So it starts to seem like, oh, we've never made hair look so realistic. Oh, the fabric movement, the liquid, the opacity of the skin. These are things that when people talk about them, it kind of doesn't sound that sexy to a person looking for a movie to go see. But if you follow the industry, you know that's where these advances are. And so you can sometimes see, like in a new Pixar movie, you'll see where the technical challenge of it was, what that they met in that movie. I do think the idea of, you know, James Cameron putting his all into a completely imagined world, it's not gonna be devoid of something good to look at and something cool to think about. It's just the lore and the storytelling didn't hook me in the first one, and so I don't really have like a big association with that part of this world. Like I see those blue cat people and I get a little sleepy. But I like the kind of weird floating dinosaur dragons that they ride. I don't know. I think there's the opportunity for some. I almost hate the phrase eye candy, but you know, I almost think if that's the worst thing this movie is, it'll still be worth seeing on the hugest screen I can get to.
Right.
I'm just not that excited about the kind of story that it is, and it looks very earnest. So it seems like that might be a hurdle. If you're not if you don't buy into the world, it might seem kind of cheesy.
Yeah,
right.
You know, but
for sure.
Kind of like all the stuff we're about to talk about. If you don't buy into the world of Moon Knight, it might seem kind of cheesy. Let's move on to that. Let's move on to we've all finished the first season of Moon Knight. It is now on Disney Plus for everyone to have seen. The last time we talked about it, we were high on Oscar Isaac's performance and some of the kind of new things they were doing. I think that was after the first 2 episodes. I mean, I definitely think if you loved the first 2 episodes, it could be that after that is when it became a mixed bag for you. I also heard people that thought the first 2 episodes were not good, and they liked some of the stuff that happened later. I think one thing that happened with Moon Knight, and I would just open this up and maybe say this and see what you guys think. I would say that we got a couple episodes that felt a certain way, a couple that felt like, and that was the kind of London-based stuff with the Moon Knight against a city backdrop. And then the middle is kind of an Indiana Jones pastiche with Moon Knight against the pyramids. And then there were also a couple episodes of sort of like dream world, psychological journey kind of stuff. And I think that it's possible that someone could have loved any one of those things and not the others, or all 3. I would say that the way I felt at the end of 6 episodes was definitely, I like this character, I like this show, but I didn't feel like I'd seen a full story. I felt like I'd seen the first season of a show that's intended to go on, or a story that is not intended to be wrapped up in those episodes. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it's intended to have felt like a big, complete story, but I think that finale left a lot of people looking for something maybe that they didn't feel like the show delivered on. And I just don't know that they could have done all that they needed to do in one episode to satisfy the fans of the psychological show, the Indiana Jones show, and the Moon Knight in a City show. You know what I mean? It was a lot of things. How did you guys feel about the way the way it felt in the end?
Steve, what'd you think?
I think it still suffered from what we've talked about with many of the other shows, where even from what you can hear John describing, that over the course of only, I think it was 6 episodes, trying to balance the scope of that storytelling and the pacing of the show. You know, I think that it kind of was a little disjointed at times, kind of transitioning between what you're describing.
Yeah.
And then when it tries to go back and be like all 3 at once at moments, you know, it kind of felt like a little messy to me. I mean, that said, you know, I think in general, overall, I like the series. I loved Oscar Isaac as the character, and I really do like what they're doing with that character in this show. I don't really know what they intend to or want to or plan to do, no matter how much they want to deny it or avoid answering it, like,
right.
In
It's
the
always
greater
very
context of the MCU, like, part of it is marketing and publicity and like the need to see this now because this is its own thing. But, there's no way that this show, I mean, I would be shocked if this show can exist on its own. And there's already like little ties to the rest of the MCU that are not so obvious. But I just think that as a series, for me, I definitely felt it got a little overambitious maybe of what it could do in 6 episodes. And that said, like, there's a couple episodes that I think are like some of the best stuff that Marvel may have attempted to do, like in terms of, what you see like Oscar Isaac doing in that one episode when he's kind of going through those memory doors, like a lot of that stuff I thought was like top-notch performance, from the actor that's playing the comic character.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's all happening out of him being in a Moon Knight outfit. The hero, quote unquote, is not, you don't see a whole lot of Moon Knight in this series, which I think, again, feels a little off because you wanted to see him in the first episode and you see a little bit of it. And then you think it's going to be a lot more, of that going forward. And it kind of dials it back a bit and becomes more of like a character thing, which I can't fault it for because I like the character. That's what I'm saying. But it's just, it's a bigger problem, I think. And I'll talk more about it maybe when we get to our feature review. But I feel like what we're describing is, I think, what the show suffers from. In general, I enjoyed the show, loved Oscar Isaac. I'm very excited to see more of the Moon Knight character, and I love the costume changes between the different characters. I just want to see more of that, and whatever comes next, I would definitely check it out. What about you, Ronald?
Yeah, I feel very similar. I think we're at a stage where I think that the dissatisfaction comes from not because we're very appreciative as Marvel fans to have an exorbitant amount of things coming at us, but now because we've had 10 years of this, we now want structure and stories that feel more complete, and even if it's a season, we want a complete story arc, and we're not getting that sometimes, even in some of the movies, and the fact that the fact that we're getting it in TV form and it might be a budgetary thing, I'd rather you skim a little bit on some of the special effects and just give me a good story of Moon Knight kicking somebody's ass with no special effects. Just give me a room full of people and him kicking some ass versus like, a Power Rangers episode at the end. It's just like, what do we need? I don't know what we need, but all of it was really solid to me. But like you were saying, like it was a couple things. It suffers from one thing that I really wish that existed in some of this stuff. Sometimes you want one person to see it out throughout the whole series. Sometimes it feels like the choice to do, hey, like such and such will do this episode, such and such will direct this episode, that sometimes can leave some disjointedness. I don't even know if that's a word.
I think it works.
It can leave it feeling very disjointed in terms of like consistency in character. Now, what we're going to run into very soon, and something that we will absolutely have to talk about, is suppose you, John, make a character series and it's perfect, and then your character winds up in another movie and they're misrepresented, or like things are missing from the character, the nuance that you had for your character isn't represented. So these characters are being handed from place to place. I like this version of Moon Knight, but I'm like, if Moon Knight winds up in Spider-Man, is it going to be the same cool Moon Knight that we know? Is it going to be like a weird version of him that's a little more snarky and shitty? Is it going to be more quiet? It's just like,
well, yeah, it's very true, Ronald. What you're saying, and I do think that could happen, that they could like lose track of the character if they Who do you think that's happened to the worst thus far? That's what I was going to ask you. Is because my big examples would be that in the Avengers movies, Ant-Man is an idiot and Star-Lord is an idiot, and in their respective movies, they're well-meaning, heroic people who are pretty smart and really try to do what's best, and they have soul. But when they're put against these other heroes, the bigger quote-unquote heroes, they're played more for laughs. And I don't know that the writers, I particularly think Star-Lord is like handled, I mean, I think that he's funny in the Avengers movies, but I don't think he's handled well as a character. And I feel like James Gunn knows that Star-Lord is kind of an idiot, but he's also got soul and he's not the butt of the joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He doesn't get kicked in the nuts and fall over, and that's his character, you know?
Yeah.
But I think in the broader sense, so I think the one that you're referring to that we're going to talk about in a minute is a huge topic to go into about about that. But no, I think you're right. I think that and that's the question. And I love this because like we go back and forth on this. We want these movies to be more. We want these movies to either lead to something, or we want them to stand on their own. And I think that there is this quasi in between thing where we might complain about one thing and then complain about the other. But I do think these TV shows, especially the TV shows that they've been putting out, you know, the Disney Plus shows, there is this weird what are they to them, where sometimes you get to the end of 6 episodes and we go, was that maybe a movie that got stretched out, or was that maybe there was not really a story to this and it feels like it's the beginning of a show, in which case 6 episodes is not really enough for a just TV showy kind of show. Like a Moon Knight television show, you could have covered maybe the same story ground over 10 episodes or 12 episodes if you were really going to dig in and tell stories. But if you're just going to do this kind of stretched out movie thing, then 6 episodes is almost too long for the amount of story that they're willing to tell. It's such a weird form. They haven't nailed it yet.
If you're going to borrow from British series, which are like sometimes 5 and 6 episodes, those are an hour long, like start to finish an hour. I'm not talking like beginning of the show, ending of the show, a full hour. And they typically have a story arc that is finished in the series. So like if you're going to borrow from the shorter season culture that tends to be in Europe, you know, in Japan and stuff like that, that also means you have to finish the fucking story. Even if there's going to be 12 more seasons of Moon Knight, I wanted to see the story finished, you know, at least enough to kind of satiate, you know, oh God, the first season was great. And then give me something at the end that's like, holy shit, this person is going to wind up affecting, you know, this character's life in some way that can't be reconciled, that can't be fixed. Like, I love that. Like, you don't have to leave me feeling like, oh man, I don't want a teaser for a TV show. I don't mind them in the movies because we've watched, you know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours, sometimes 3, sometimes. But it leads to be like, okay, we've had a complete story. These shows are feeling like the first half an hour of a movie. That's how much information is being covered in these shows sometimes. And, you know, I just want more. It's not that I you know, we're paying money for it too. Like, it's not like Disney isn't giving us this for free. They aren't like, you know, what's cool? You can watch Disney Plus for free and then you can go to the movies to see these things. We're paying money each month for this, and, you know, satiate the season sort of. I want to feel like the season's done.
Yeah.
Give me something else later, you know. So I don't know.
Or leave me wanting more because it was so concise and so great.
Yeah.
I mean, if it could be. I think the thing that we have all talked about that was consistent for me, and you mentioned it, Steve, was Oscar Isaac being kind of the reason
he was
to watch
incredible.
This thing.
Yeah,
I did see someone say something that was funny. They said Oscar Isaac is very impressive if you've never seen anyone act before. And I kind of know what they're saying, because people are falling all over themselves just to compliment him for putting in an actual performance in a superhero thing. But I think the reason that we all responded to it is we do watch all these shows and movies, and there is a difference between someone being cast in a role and doing an okay job of it and somebody who seems like they really take control of the inner life of the character. And I think that's the thing that made this show to the end still feel cool to me, even in terms of Ethan Hawke's performance. I felt like there was some charge he got from playing Arthur Harrow that you felt, you know, even in scenes that were kind of like cookie cutter villain scenes, there was some little spark between those two actors in particular. So I do think there are elements of this show that had a life to them that was based on performance and that kind of acting, like acting being the kind of muscle that makes the thing hold together. Oscar Isaac was very conscious, I think, of taking control of this character. And the fact that there is no deal in place, that at least none that they've talked about, for future projects, kind of makes me think maybe he would be the actor to do a little bit of like what Robert Downey Jr. did, which is when he comes in, he kind of became the standard bearer for the Tony Stark character. And that's one of the reasons why that character was so consistently him, was that he had a kind of thing he brought to it. So if they bring Oscar Isaac back, maybe whatever cachet he has as an actor is going to allow him to exert that tiny little bit of actorly control over a character. That means you're not going to bring Moon Knight in and use him in some, half-hearted way, because the deal's not in place for Oscar Isaac to be in 7 Things. That they have to woo him back and make a deal. But I don't know. I don't know what I would rather see. I guess I would do another season of the show if I felt like they could kind of hammer out that tonal thing we're talking about, of like just how to pace those moves through the different kind of worlds of story. Because I think that within each of those worlds, there were cool visuals. Like, I loved some of the scenes inside the pyramids where it was like lit by like shafts of light being directed down, and then it was hitting water and reflecting on the ceiling. I felt like that's probably what it must really look like in one of those things where there's really no natural, there's only natural light and then torchlight. I thought the atmosphere of that was really good. I also thought that some of the psychological stuff, like you said, Steve, dream episodes can be so boring, but this felt really visceral and real, and something about his performance as Steven against his performance as Mark, that can be so corny when an actor's playing opposite themselves, but when it's done right, and I think in recent years we've seen a few instances of it being done well. I just think it's got such a cool trick that what you occasionally forget, that there aren't actually 2 of him, and that the mannerisms being so different. And I even think the kind of death fake out that we get in there is well earned from a character standpoint. I liked the heartwarming aspect of maybe not wanting to leave us on a bummer vibe, but that too is a thing that could have stuck at the end of this season, at least, that death. That would have made this feel more like it did something, like it went out of its way to do something. But I don't think they really wanted to do that yet, at least. The character that would have died would have been, too much of a loss maybe to the tone of this show. But yeah, I guess I'm with you, Steve. I like the character. I like the performance. I'm here for Moon Knight. I don't know really what I want to see him, they in next, but whatever it is, I hope that it's tonally consistent and he's not just wisecracking.
Right.
In some event movie.
Yeah.
So who do you think are the biggest? I asked you this a minute ago. Who do you think are the biggest instances of like whiplash, of like they feel different from movie to movie because in Marvel characters do get spread out so much?
Wanda.
Well,
Wanda's
okay.
probably Wanda's probably the one, man. Like, she's had a Russian accent, not had a Russian accent. She's kind of felt like this person that was lost, and then we were brought to WandaVision, which had a lot of nuance and love put into the script, man. Like, I'm not just saying this because this was the first one that we saw, but there was this was an undertaking that really felt like it had the most challenges, because we had a character that we'd seen so many different versions of. And, to have her fleshed out the way she was, and then hear that she would appear in a movie with Doctor Strange. What? I was very excited because, we saw versions of her in the films Age of Ultron, and, every movie that she was in.
War.
Yeah, Civil War. And then to see that she was appearing in a movie with Doctor Strange just felt very promising. And then, the movie came out, and I'm very curious to know what you guys thought about Doctor Strange. Well, I guess because we're going to wind up talking about it quite a bit, just give me your initial, right out of the theater, how did you feel?
Disappointed.
Okay. Okay. What about you, John?
I saw it. I've seen it twice. I saw it once because I was trying to get it out of the way so I wouldn't be spoiled, and then I saw it again with like family and like a crowded Saturday afternoon showing after like a Thursday night showing. So the first night I was kind of tired, and I was really not into following the story too much, and I would say disappointed or frustrated was the way I would describe it. But I also knew that it wasn't hating. It was just like, oh, I probably will enjoy this movie more knowing what it is and then watching it again. And I definitely enjoyed it a hell of a lot more, like knowing what it was, and not getting caught up in the sort of, I don't know, fan people hype of what this movie was rumored to be or supposed to be, and just seeing it for what it is. Because I think that as a Doctor Strange sequel, it's big. It's a big, fun Doctor Strange sequel. I think as like what people might have been hoping it would be, which I think is like the next big Marvel event movie, I think it feels like it missed an opportunity to make things feel bigger, but I think that taking the movie on its own terms, I'm like, well, that doesn't really bother me as much now that I've got a handle on how this is a really big, fun Sam Raimi movie with, a lot of the fun stuff I want from a Sam Raimi movie. And I don't know. So I think I'm overall positive on it. But I'm also
overall positive.
I'm overall positive on it, but I totally get that this is that movie that like you could say like, okay, it opens up that question of who's to blame for the expectations when the trailer like tipped off too much, maybe it made people start guessing what else might be in the movie. I think certain things could have been left out of the trailer, and people would have had the pleasant surprise of a kind of what if episodes that's like nestled in the middle of this movie. But I think going in hyped for certain elements that this movie seemed like it was going to promise, I think it got people too excited for something that the movie was not going to deliver. So in that sense, I blame the marketing, but I do blame the fans too. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird thing. Expectations.
My feelings about this only derive from the depiction of Wanda. My disappointment really only sits in that. Like I whatever the expectations were in terms of surprise cameos, I knew that those were all like made up from fans. Like,
right.
What we really have to understand is like, and I know this is like a big thing for comic book fans. What you know in the comic book is not what's going to show up in the theater. It's just not going to happen. It's never going to look or sound like a fucking thing that you read before. They may borrow elements from it, but it's not going to be that. Now, one thing I did get really bothered by is I feel like Sam Raimi never saw WandaVision. And it feels like
he didn't watch it. He watched key scenes, he said.
Right. It felt like we were watching like Age of Ultron Wanda versus like WandaVision that we'd seen, and then that like nuance to her character and all that stuff. I felt like there was none of that in this fucking movie, man. Like,
I would even say it looked like they just skipped WandaVision. It's like WandaVision was like, all about.
That's what it felt like.
It's like WandaVision. The lesson is you've got to process trauma, and then like the lesson of this is like, you know who's the worst person in the world?
Women.
Someone who's been through trauma. Mothers. It just it bugged me that like her evil turn hinged on the motherhood thing. Like there's so much that feels weird about that. I think that as it was written and as it was performed, it fit the story of a villain in this story. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like it fit this movie, but it definitely was like a weird choice to do that with a female villain and make it all about motherhood and everything. But also, it just felt like, I mean, I can tell myself, oh, we were wrong to think she was doing as well as she seemed to be doing at the end of WandaVision. She was actually looking in that book at the end, learning about some of this other stuff, like, but I feel like that is a retcon, if I'm using that out of date term correctly. Like to say that she was furthering her evil at the end of WandaVision feels like something that's not made clear by the text of the show. So it's weird to see a Wanda at the beginning of this movie who seemingly has not processed her grief and in fact has. I kind of liked how it's me. I kind of liked how blatant they were about her being on the other side of things. But I didn't think there was enough. Again, like you said, it feels like they just ignored what happened at the end of WandaVision. What do you think, Steve?
I mean, that's the problem. Yes, like the big problem with the movie, I agree, is the Wanda of it all, especially I think because of the emphasis on the Disney Plus series and like that show specifically as the launch for it all, and like the scope of that show and really what they are saying we can do with these characters. with these shows to kind of use that as a vault into
yeah
the movies or whatever. And the fact that, we did all this time with Wanda and WandaVision, and that kind of sets her up to be a bigger character in the scope of the movie. She didn't have her own movie, but she basically is the star of this movie in many ways, as the villain, though, which is a weird thing. And I don't know. I guess the way they handled it is what I don't like. And that's kind of what doesn't let me like fully buy the turn as a villain. I mean, I definitely think she's really great in the movie. I think I think she's been consistently great as that character for the most part. But I think right off the bat, like that kind of set me off a little bit right when the movie starts. Like, it is kind of cool how they just like reveal it, like John just said. But I feel like in this movie, that reveal kind of felt cool. But when I'm being trained to think about the shows too, and the reliance on the shows, that was completely inconsistent to me. And it kind of like ruined it from the jump a little bit for me, because as a podcast, as a person myself, like we're huge Marvel fans. Like we talk about it all the time. And like this movie, and like kind of sort of how I've been feeling about some of the Disney Plus series, is like really, and a disappointment word that I just threw out there is the Wanda part. But also it's just like my confidence in what the real idea is behind phase 4 is really, I kind of really came into question after seeing this movie. And it's because of the thing that we just talked about WandaVision. And it's like, oh, well, you need to see WandaVision to understand why this would happen. And they don't spend time really addressing it, with the exception of a line or two of dialogue to say where you were in New Jersey or whatever, or what happened there. But if you didn't see the show, you wouldn't even know what that meant. It's just, it's like having a cake and eating it too kind of thing. Like they have this new medium to be able to explore these characters, and then for the character to kind of all be for that exploration to be for naught, or at least that bridge not to be there to this movie, that really was disappointing to me. And then, I think the concerns about all the movies so far in phase 4, I guess with the exception of Shang-Chi and No Way Home, in terms of like not just a quality issue, but in terms of like what the plan is for phase 4 or going past phase 4. Seeing this movie, because yes, like John said, I kind of was like being felt it's marketed, even the way they talk about it at some of the panels, like that this was kind of one of those pivot movies, like for this phase. And one of the big event movies for this phase, and which kind of felt a little weird to be a Doctor Strange movie, and it would be that movie that is like the pivot. But then when they're talking about the multiverse and what just happened in No Way Home, and seeing Wanda in this, and like the teases of the cameos that Ronald mentioned, that made it feel like it was going to be a bit bigger than it was. But John already said it, like, in the real story of this movie, it's not as big at all as you thought it was. And for all the multiverses that are there, there's only really a couple that we even, spend any time in. And, and Doctor Strange is really not a huge part of what allows, this movie to work, in my opinion. I like him as Doctor Strange, and I've grown to like that character a lot in the MCU, but man, I don't know. Like, I feel like I was entertained by the movie, and like it wasn't a movie. It wasn't like a movie I didn't like. I'm on the same page. It's like, I don't think it's just a quality issue, because I did think the movie was still fun, and for me, it's kind of like mid-tier Marvel if I was going to rank it. Yeah. But when I think about it in scope of the other movies in phase 4 and these shows that are a part of phase 4, I do think Marvel might have a quality problem. I really do. And that's concerning to me, especially when I pair that with the ideas. I don't know what the path is right now, and it's not clear at all what the path is.
So it's funny you say that, Steve. I said something to y'all like a couple months ago, and sometimes I come in hot, but I really meant that, like, I had an issue with the idea of like what the multiverse means for business. And what that could mean is like, it's just a catch-all for like, we can fuck something up and write it through a story and fuck it up. That's what this is. It's a eraser that you've created forever in this phase.
But they haven't done that. They haven't used it that way.
But no, I just mean that it exists. The fact that multiverses exist is that. Like the fact that it exists in a world where you should just no stories have been tackled well enough to justify having 4 versions of it, or 5 versions of it, or 10, or 100, or naming them numbers. Just give us one good story, and I don't give a fuck about a multiverse. Like they haven't earned the right to have multiverses yet. To me, not in this phase, because it feels like they haven't tackled just one good story yet enough for there to feel like we could justify.
See, I don't agree with that at all, but I guess that's just a matter of opinion. I think they did the opposite of that, though. I think they did the opposite of, in this movie, using the multiverse to do things that I might have even been excited to see, like bringing characters in and redoing things and having people come back. They went the other way. They went one place that had like a very specific set of circumstances that happened there, and it was all connected to this one story. And the multiple versions of Doctor Strange that we get are like all connected to this story's idea that he's the real threat, that like he might be going after Scarlet Witch, but everybody that meets him is afraid of him and what he's done or what he would do. And it's based on that whole idea of he's the guy who sees all the options and knows what's the right way. I mean, it's a little bit of their attempt to set him up as the kind of Tony Stark who's the moral center of this world, but also showing how Doctor Strange, his story is different. But I agree with you. If they start using it to like redo storylines and fix stuff they've ruined, but I feel like they're showing how they're not doing that. They're even doing that thing of saying hopping between multiverses is dangerous because it can cause these problems. I mean, it's almost like they're going out of their way to say, we're not going to give you 5 different Captain Americas just because we had the fun of seeing 3 Spider-Men. You know what I mean?
Right.
But we almost wanted more of that in this movie, more clever usage of like I love this idea. Well, we'll talk about who Bruce Campbell plays in this movie, but like people were rumoring who he might be playing in this movie when his cameo came up, and all this. Oh, is he an alternate dimension Doctor Strange? Is he going to be Kraven the Hunter? Is he going to be all these things? And then who he actually is in the movie is so ridiculous. There's a certain amount of trolling those fan expectations. I feel like this movie is kind of the beginning of that. Somehow that name, somehow the hype, somehow the trailer made us all think this was going to be the movie that was going to blow up the multiverse idea. But they still haven't really done it. And Ronald, you and I were talking about this last night off mic, but look at the movies that have come out so far in Phase 4. Look at the ones that are coming up. It doesn't seem like they're leading up to anything. It's not just that they haven't yet with the 5 that have already come out. I mean, we got Black Widow, we got Shang-Chi, we got the Eternals, we got Spider-Man, we've got this. Those aren't really building up to much. The next, we got Thor, then what is it? Black Panther, then it's Quantumania, then it's Guardians, and then it's Marvels. Those don't feel like they're building up to the same thing either. You know what I mean? So I wonder if Phase 4 is not going to be a phase that has like a culminating event. And it makes me wonder, like, how long was it that they built up to Thanos? Like from the first, movie to Avengers, was that Phase 1 or was that 2 phases? They took their time with it, is my point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would almost be fine if they don't try to build up to some major event. But I do think what you said, Steve, I mean, I heard them specifically say they were, after the success of Spider-Man No Way Home, they were trying to make this movie more of an event movie. I don't know if they know, and this is where you would say quality problem. I would say, like, I don't know if they know what they're doing as much as, like, I don't think they quite know how to capture that zeitgeist in the sense that every movie is going to be made at a certain quality level and they're going to appeal to that audience that's coming out for it. But that sense of a plan, I don't need to feel like the movies are adding up. I just like that sure-handedness, and I don't want to see something that feels like, oh, they got that like 85% of the way there, and then it came out, and now we're on to the next thing because we're all so excited about the next thing. That's the part that I start to resent, is this notion that they know they have me on the hook. But individually, I have still enjoyed all these movies and most of these shows. So I'm not like papering over it and looking the other way and pretending that this stuff is good. But I could easily see how there would be a day where there'd just be too many Marvel shows to keep up with, too many movies to get invested in, if they don't have those, as you've said, like those high points that make you feel like the quality is what's dragging you along and not the soap opera.
I think one of the things that really irritated me was the marketing for this movie. Like, I think that Disney has earned our attention, right? Like people, the pre-orders for this movie were incredible, right? Mm-hmm. That was fine. But then they're like, let's show Professor X in the next trailer. It's like, are you so like, how confident are you of this movie if you're Disney and you know that people are going to come? What the fuck difference is it like that 2 million more people pre-ordered the tickets because you showed Professor X? Like, why can't we just have a movie with a little bit of mystery and have us watch it in the theater? It feels like they're trying to, it's okay to have a set of surprises that are only revealed by stepping into that theater, or somebody that's too talkative telling you, like, why the fuck do I have to watch in a trailer that one of the coolest characters that we've known is crossing over into this world, however, whatever dimension, however he's doing it? Like, come on, man. Like, I don't want to be spoiled before I see the damn movie. And this
it implies that there's so much more coming, and there wasn't. And I think that's the thing about when the Spider-Man trailer showing Doc Ock, but they had so much more that the movie could reveal to you.
Yeah,
I think we all thought, oh, okay, if they're going to show us Professor Xavier, then imagine who we might get, And it's like, I admit, I started to think, oh, who might we get, And I did have a little list of things that might happen in that movie that clearly the movie was really not trying to do. I do think maybe we should talk, since we've already been a little spoilery about who the villain is in this movie, but we haven't talked about the different cameos. Let's get to some of that super spoilery stuff. But before we do that, maybe let's talk about like a couple of things that did work for you about the movie. Mm-hmm. I've mentioned the Sam Raimi-ness of it all. I do think that some of the transitions and some of the filmmaking, I think him working with that crew that can visualize this stuff, and like, especially when it comes to like throwing open a portal, moving through the portal, the camera moving around you, and you're seeing the portal closing behind the portal. There were some shots that were just really beautifully orchestrated, and some of the action was really cool to look at in that sense. And I also think there's a Sam Raimi-ish touch, kind of an Evil Dead sort of crossover portion of this that is so fun when you realize that's where they're going. It's probably the most fun moment in the movie is when Doctor Strange has a realization about something he has to do that just is not what I expected at all. But I love the form that he takes through the climax. I love that, the hero looks the way he does in the last 20 minutes of this movie. And I also think that just the music, Danny Elfman did the score, and there were some parts to this where it was almost like it was an overdone score that was kind of making little in-jokes about what scores do at different points in this movie. But there were some moments where it just felt like a sure hand. The camera work, the music. I did feel the magic of these artists working on something like this. They managed to kind of crack through that Marvel House style in some key moments that made me feel, like I said, like I'm seeing the first Sam Raimi movie I've seen in theaters for many years. So in that sense, I enjoyed it. So what did you guys think? What were some of the big pluses for you?
I mean, I guess I like the scene you were kind of describing just there, where Doctor Strange and America kind of like fly through those many dimensions, and you kind of see the different formats, mediums, like all that stuff was really cool. That sequence was cool, and I think that is kind of what some people maybe felt the movie was going to be more of. So while that was cool in the context of this story, it was kind of like a little bit of a like, damn, I wish I would have seen more of that. I mean, and the sequence, where Wanda kind of like takes out a lot of people really quick. I won't say it before we get into the spoilers, but like, I think that sequence as a sequence worked really well. In context of the story, again, I don't really think it works that well when you start bringing the story into it, but just as filmmaking, like you're talking about the Raimi aspect, there's definitely some great direction in the movie overall that I liked a lot. What else? I actually didn't really love the score that much, to be honest with you. What else worked? I don't know, man. The more I think about it, I kind of get more down on the movie, to be blunt. I do want to see it again, like you were describing, to see how I kind of feel about it after seeing it again. But I can't help but feel like it makes me concerned, and it just kind of like, I just feel like this whole next section of movies, telling great standalone stories at the expense of the larger scale of the story, or like the bigger picture, seems to kind of be getting lost a little bit more now. And my concern is that like now they're doing that. The criticism that's coming up, even from myself, like in movies that are, the more outside of the Marvel mold that you get, like the cinema score for this movie being a B plus, like only the Eternals was a B plus, and like I think Thor was also a B, but like only 3 of their movies have been below an A or A minus. So for Eternals and this,
that's wild.
Right? For Thor, I mean, for Eternals and this being the 2 most diverse films, like the kind of out of the box Marvel system films, like they're the most different in some ways. That I think that's concerning, and that kind of speaks to what I'm concerned about, like with the aim or what the spine of this whole idea is right now, because you really can't, or really struggle to see it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I really liked Elizabeth Olsen in it. I thought she was great. Even Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, is great, in general in the MCU. I don't think he got as much to do in this movie as I thought he would do, with the exception of the scene you were describing, John, towards the end of the film, which I thought was fun and entertaining. But I also feel like that's going to be a pretty divisive scene, or a whole set piece for people that maybe aren't into the whole Raimi of it all. And I mean, some of the people in my theater were definitely vocal about that on opening night. So that was interesting to kind of hear it being received in the opposite direction. But I don't know, like what stood out to you, Ron? Like what were the big, what was a couple big positives, I guess?
I do think that Sam Raimi is a fucking genius at creating dread. Like there was they always threatened that this movie would have this like kind of scary feel to it.
Yeah,
it was spooky, man. It was spooky. There were like those like long, fast shots that Sam Raimi has done in Evil Dead that you'd kind of alluded to. I'm trying to figure out if I liked America. I'm trying to figure out if I liked her. I feel like she was just kind of thrust on us. And I have a thing, man. There's a thing that I'm very sensitive to as a Black person in the world, as a minority in the world. I love that diversity is coming into the MCU. Sometimes I feel like if you just would just have it happen to put them in a good story, I want that more than what feels like people just popping up sometimes. Like I don't know what I'm feeling right now, but it felt divisive that she was brought in the way she was, and that they're like, oh, and she has 2 moms, but she's also like gay, right? Like my understanding, she's a lesbian. Like I would have loved that part. Like I would have loved to. Like I don't know anything about America Chavez besides her mom's died or missing, or I wish I knew more about her. I wish that, especially the way she was thrust into the story, like I wish there would have been more interaction with, I don't know, man. It just that
you mean a bee sting or a bee is responsible for all this?
That's a very important bee.
So crazy.
No, I think I wanted to say, what do you guys think of America? I think you're right, Ronald, that she's kind of like, I mean, it's interesting that we asked you to talk about positives and you ended up on another thing that might not work.
Yeah, I was going to finish it up with something positive.
But I do want to just say that I agree with you 100% that, like, I think the plus of the way this character was presented was cool, that she was thrust on us, that the movie starts with her. But I also think it feels a little like that's all they did. Like there's this kind of, and I want to keep coming back to the script to this movie. I like Michael Waldron as a thinker and as a creator, but I feel like she's a person that, and some of the stuff you're talking about with Benedict Cumberbatch, Steve, his storyline in this movie could be so affecting. It starts off very affecting, where he is at the beginning of the movie, and this whole idea of going to every place and everybody you meet thinks you're the bad guy or thinks that you're the worst person. Like that could have felt more. They could have wrung more of that Marvel kind of pathos out of that. I feel like this script feels like it was a polish away from the usual level.
Absolutely.
Of like being finely tuned on a line-to-line basis. And I think both Benedict Cumberbatch's arc, which like I said, in the story is actually a cool story. And Ronald,
it's so cool.
The America Chavez, I agree. Like, I think they gave us all the raw material for a character that really should have popped. But instead, she's just kind of likable. And that's it. And that's like as far as it goes. And I don't know that I ever really feel like her personal tragedy really touches her kind of Disney sort of veneer. And I'm not really blaming the actress. I don't think she's bad, but I don't think that there's just not much meat to her except for what's on the page. You know what I mean? She's just kind of, and again, that could be really cool that she's just there and she's got these cool powers, but it does feel like maybe this is the Marvel throw it to the wall and see what sticks kind of method, rather than necessarily having that great script, that great story that's just so complete.
All of these characters had to, they started one way and had to change their identities in some way. Like whatever they've known themselves to be changed, right? I feel like that could have been a better way to have these three characters kind of do that in a way that tied up together. You know, like I don't think that it should have been like, well, you know, like the Wizard of Oz, where they got to the end is like, you've had courage all along. But goddamn, like it would have made more sense to me.
You've been able to punch star-shaped holes to other dimensions all along.
Yes. I mean, like, it could have had something like that connected. I mean, like, Doctor Strange's arc is so fucking cool and fell so short to me because of how everything was happening around it. But I'm saying that coming out in the end feeling like I'd watch it like 3 more times. I know that sounds weird, but like, I didn't hate it, but I have the same fear. I've had the fear that Steve had. I had that because I know what it is. Like, it's like, you know, when you hear things that aren't like, when you hear things like TV show versus a movie, sure, that sounds incredible, man. And I'm excited about that. But what that means is disjointedness. And the stories are already disjointed. So you're asking for another level of disjointedness to the story, right? To add to the stories that are handed off from person to person, where you'll see 15 different versions of a person, depending on what director touches the character, right? Then you're throwing in a TV show element to it. So like, I feared that for a really long time. And I hate that it comes across like, so like, oh, fuck, this is going to be weird. But
right.
I knew it. I knew it as soon as I heard it, that it would be disjointed like this. I'm a little upset that Wanda was the one that suffered from that. I didn't want her to be the one.
She suffered enough.
Yeah, it hurt my feelings, man. It legitimately hurt my feelings. I was like, this isn't. If this came out first, before WandaVision, I'd be like, okay, this is.
I think it was supposed to, Ronald. I think originally the plan was for this movie to be out before that show. This movie got way delayed because they changed directors and then COVID hit, all that stuff. And then, WandaVision was the first thing out of the gate that they had that was ready to go. But the story there was a lot of like shifting the order around in that period, even before COVID hit. But, that's why when they started leaning on the shows, that was like, well, these are the things we have the furthest into production at this time.
Steve, how would you have felt if this came out first? I'm not saying like it's perfect, but I'm just saying,
it doesn't fix
like,
all the issues you're talking about.
No, but it makes
her arc make more sense. It's still, she's a murderer in this movie. I think that's the thing that's hard to accept.
Yeah.
Like on a grand scale, like like in WandaVision, she's not so much murdering these people; she's kind of holding them against their will to her.
Which is horrifying.
To her liking.
In that is horrifying.
Enough. And then you jump from that to like you have some sort of pullback. But I don't know. Like there's like John said, there's a lot that this movie's changed, whether it's the story, director, whatever. There was a lot of reshoots for it, and I mean, there's reports that like a lot, like the guts of the story changed, like that that the whole opening sequence when he visits the wedding, like that was maybe more of what the story was going to be, in terms of him finding multiverses where he could be with her, and then it going bad. And then obviously, and the Spider-Man No Way Home of it all coming out before it, like there's reports that America was supposed to pop up in that, and she didn't, so there's a lot of like what it coulda, shouldas. And obviously, I think the COVID element definitely kind of, and I mean, I'm not trying to make excuses because I'm calling it out on this episode.
No, I get it.
But I do feel like the more and more I think about it and talk about things like that, that's definitely made it way more challenging to kind of keep a through line in terms of what a plan is. When I say there's a spine missing, it could very well be because of what had to be shifted and moved and pushed back, pushed up for COVID. And I mean, the fact that they're still moving dates around for some of these movies, that too makes me a little concerned that things are being changed to accommodate for this change in order.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, man. I need a home run. Me too. Real bad. And, you know, Thor's coming out in a couple months. I don't know what implications it has for the phase 4 or this through line that I'm describing, or if it could even carry that level of weight. But it, from the scope of the trailer, it doesn't look like it. But I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with it. It looks like it's going to just be an awesome Thor movie again, which I'm fine with. But I mean, I just need a home run from Marvel, and I need it soon.
Yeah.
Well, I obviously enjoyed this movie more than you guys did, but I know what you mean about the sense of like the only reason I got a $200 million Sam Raimi Doctor Strange movie is because they can print money based on the success of these movies.
Yeah.
And so for me, I want to see as many of the weird, odd, experimental things as they want to do. I think you get less of those if they're trying to get back some kind of mojo, or you know what I mean, if they're trying to chase some kind of dragon. So I think that idea that this is a swaggery kind of movie to put out. You know what I mean? Like this movie is maybe prohibitive to people that are not looking for a certain style of action, or it's a weird story. It is one, honestly, that only on the second viewing did I actually satisfy my sense of what the plot logic was.
Right.
I often think that's on me as a viewer when I miss details, but I also think a movie shouldn't require a second viewing for you to get a sense of the story. So I don't know. There's a lot to be said about where this movie sits in the Marvel canon. I guess I would put it kind of mid-tier, maybe like a notch up from the absolute middle, just because I do think this movie has a style. But I think we are all sharing that sense of like not really knowing what's coming next, not having a sense of that. That should be exciting, but for this franchise that has made such a mint on that stability and that structure, it does seem a little bit like, didn't they just announce Kevin Feige's gone off to plan the next 10 years or something like that for some retreat?
Yeah.
That almost feels like a promise to people to let them know, like, no, we're going to have a plan. But yeah, I don't care as much about the plan as I do about just the individual movies. And I do want them to add up to some degree. So if this is an example of how the TV shows and the movies interact, they do need to improve on that. Because this actually is worse because we saw WandaVision. You know, like what happens to Wanda in this movie is worse because we felt like we already saw her like achieve a certain kind of peace. So all right. Well, let's talk a little bit of spoilery stuff because there are some things we've been kind of hinting at that I just would love to know what you guys think. And right now, I guess, you've had your fun. We'll see you next week if you don't want to hear spoilers or you haven't seen the movie. But the Illuminati, we've kind of hinted at them. Let's talk about who they are in this movie. The Illuminati is Baron Mordo, Professor X, Captain Carter, who we've got to know on What If, a new version of Captain Marvel, but it's the friend from the Captain Marvel movie. Black Bolt, it's the same actor who played him in the Inhumans TV show that no one seems to want to remember until now. And then also, perhaps the biggest surprise, the moment that might have been the biggest gasp in the theater that I saw it with, which was John Krasinski as Reed Richards. Here's your Illuminati, folks. What did you guys think of the introduction of the Illuminati and then the way they were purposed in this movie? How did it make you feel?
I love their appearance. What I'll say though is, how many groups are we going to get that could have interfered with big catastrophic events? You know, like the
well, they did.
You know, they
fought Thanos in their universe.
Yeah, they killed him.
Sure. I mean, I guess. Sure. You know what I'm saying, though.
Sure.
No, but Thanos isn't a multiverse thing. That's one thing this movie does address, is that Thanos was only our universe, you know? So he wasn't, right. The other universes could have had a Thanos who went into gardening, and that was it.
I just mean, like, Eternals, Illuminati, Avengers, all these people could have, would have, should have. But I really did enjoy John Krasinski and Monica Rambeau's mom and Captain Carter.
Marie?
Like,
Is it Marie Rambeau? Is that her name? I'm gonna look it up.
I think that might be what it is.
Maria.
No, I don't know.
Maria.
Okay, Maria. Yeah, I thought they were really cool. Watching them get dismantled was really hard to watch. It was like What If, but like times 50. And it felt like Deadpool kills the Marvel universe. I love the way that like
I thought it reminded me of the opening sequence of Invincible.
Yeah.
Yes,
honestly.
that too. Oh my God, it felt like that too. I kind of mentioned that to Aaron. Yeah, I love that, man. But God, I would have loved to see. I want to see John Krasinski in a Fantastic Four movie so bad. I was shaking when I saw him. Like, I was just like, Fantastic Four.
It was funny to see it the first time I saw it because it was like, oh yeah, and I had actually had, when you don't realize you saw a spoiler, but then you realize you did.
Okay, yeah.
Like something you thought somebody was bullshitting.
Right.
Scarlet Witch kills Black Bolt and Reed Richards in one scene, and you're like, whatever.
That's not gonna
happen. And then I see the movie, and I'm like, oh, there they are. Oh no, what's gonna happen here? But I felt like it was staged so much like a gag. It was really just like you said earlier, Steve. It was a scene that was really cool, but all it did was say, yep, Scarlet Witch is not to be messed with in this movie.
Yeah, she's super strong.
Which I'm fine with. I'm fine with these characters in retrospect. I'm fine with dispatching these characters in this way because I can see that this movie was never going to be the movie to introduce the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into the main MCU plotline. I can see a different version where maybe one of the Illuminati members would have survived and would have gone with them back to their dimension, and we would now have blah, blah, blah. But I can see that this movie was not trying to make the universe that we know any bigger, which I think is where when you said disappointment, Steve, that would be my main disappointment when I walked out of it the first time, was feeling like, oh, I thought I was getting to see this expanding thing. But when I see it the second time, I can totally appreciate the audience gasps when they see Reed Richards, and I'm like, oh man, this is a joke. This is a mean joke. This is trolling. This is funny. This is Sam Raimi and maybe Michael Waldron who wrote this. We should say he's a Rick and Morty alumni. So he's like, he knows how to do the sci-fi thing and subvert it. You know what I mean? He knows how to make fun of the trope that he's using and make a mean joke out of it. So now I think it's one of the funniest, meanest jokes I've seen in a movie at this level. But it does make you think, like, well, now, as Henry said, well, now are they going to reintroduce any of these characters? Is it going to be weird? Does that mean we'll never get Captain Carter in live action because now reintroducing her would be weird? You know? And I have to say, Professor X and Reed Richards were the main two there that I'm like, well, I kind of hope we're not done with John Krasinski as Reed Richards if everybody's willing. If, however, they only got him because he thought this was a funny cameo and a joke and a nod to his almost casting and all that stuff, I'm fine with it being over because I saw a list of other people that could play Reed Richards that look good with a beard. And when I came to the name Dev Patel, I was like, okay, yeah, you got me. See you, John. Dev Patel, Reed Richards sounds really awesome. But I would love to see John Krasinski in the Fantastic Four movie if that's the way they're going to go. I just don't know that. I don't know that this was designed to tip us off. I think this was designed to be perfect casting to fool you into thinking that John Krasinski is about to be part of the MCU. Because another actor, like if they had a hammy actor playing it up, you would have felt the joke coming, you know? But instead, he played it so sincerely that it really did feel like the move they would make. So I don't know. Where do you guys stand on that? What do you hope it's John Krasinski? Do you hope they have a totally different look for the Fantastic Four?
What do you think, Steve?
I mean, I love John Krasinski. I would be down for him as Reed Richards, and I know that's like an ultimate fan casting thing. You know, honestly, that said, though, I would also love it just to be somebody entirely different, honestly, because I mean, I just like the idea. You know, even with what they've done in No Way Home, you know, 3 different actors playing 3 different Peter Parkers, you know, like I like it being a little more, I like the idea of it not being as predictable, like what you're describing earlier, Ronald, you know, like that, you know, you get this sense of something, but I feel like, you know, John Krasinski is a pretty big name and it would be cool to see around in the MCU for a while if that's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
And, John Watts leaving the Fantastic Four movie, him showing up as Reed Richards, them announcing that, the Jack not Reacher, the show he has on Amazon is ending after this season.
Oh, Steve, you tricky bastard.
They call that a funnel, and it's a news funnel. And I'm just like,
you're suggesting that maybe John Krasinski, if he were a director,
yeah,
if he made some great movies, that maybe his wife was also in. Maybe his wife was also going to be in it with him as another part of the Fantastic Four. I mean, again, this is what could be cool, and I'd be down with that scenario too. I love him, I really do. But there's great options all over the place of who could be that character, like and
Dev Patel.
like that. Yeah, Dev would be great.
Oh my God, Dev Patel would be incredible.
Put him in everything. We're huge Dev fans here. But in the it was cool. It was really cool to see him in this movie. That's the reveals and like that whole sequence was a great sequence. But it also felt like a 20-minute unnecessary sequence beyond just being like, whoa, it's Professor X. Whoa, it's John. Like that was really fun to see. But for the efficiency of the movie, like I just feel like you got to see one more time, like how strong Wanda is, and I do kind of agree with what you said about Henry. Like, I do feel like showing how easily they're dispatched after surviving something as big as what they described before they had to like kill Doctor Strange in that world, like for them to be, remove that quickly within a course of 10 minutes. It's like
chumps.
Well, what impact do they have in 616 if they come around? Like, are they that disposable, up against someone like her?
Yeah. And it wasn't like they didn't stand a chance. Like, it wasn't even like they beat her up a little bit. It wasn't
a coordinated attack at all.
Try a thing. They tried like, oh God. Like some of the deaths were so fucking weird, man. Like what happened to Monica Rambeau's mom? Like just something fell on her. Like Aaron was like, what was that?
What about cutting Captain Marvel and Captain Carter in half?
Yeah.
With the shield.
And then
that's just like, without showing it, it's like that's great Raimi direction,
The Anson Mount Black Bolt, that was brutal.
Caved his
that was harsh for a PG-13 movie. That was the one moment. And also, I guess string cheesing Reed Richards was pretty brutal too. And then did you notice that his head popped at the end?
Yeah.
Of
Yes.
So, no, I'm surprised they did that. But again, I think the meanness of it kind of earns its space. But you're right that it's like. It really was like and I said this before, but it really was like a what if episode just kind of plunked into the middle of this movie.
It was.
That admittedly is not a long movie for these movies. It's just 2 hours and a few minutes long. And I will say, seeing it the second time, one of the things I did appreciate, it's a weirdly paced movie, and I mean that in a sense of it's kind of breakneck. There's not a whole lot of like setting up at the beginning. It's kind of jump in with both feet, and I kind of respect that about it. But I think somehow it can still feel long. When a movie is that untethered and kind of zipping around, you can still feel a little bit like you said, Steve. You almost could have taken the Illuminati sequence out of the movie.
Yeah.
And the story would be the same. Maybe the Illuminati could have been there as an intro. I don't know. I'm kind of glad, though, frankly, that they introduced things in this movie that they wanted to deal with in this movie and not introduce the Illuminati for one scene and then he teleports to another dimension and that's it. That would have been an even bigger waste of time in a way. Do you know what I mean? But it would have introduced them rather than getting rid of them all in one spell. So I just think whatever they did with that, it was going to be an interesting experiment because you want people to be excited about what you're doing, and showing Professor X in the trailer really did. It really did set me on the path of thinking about all the possibilities. And when you see the movie, he had a cool death with her coming out of the smoke behind him and twisting his neck and then cutting to the real world. That was well shot. But I'm with you, Steve. When it got to the end of that scene, I was like, oh, well, I guess we're done with that.
Yeah. I think the only reason the Illuminati existed was so Baron Mordo could say, the Illuminati. So he could say it like that. I think that's the only reason why they're just like, Chiwetel, you say Illuminati really funny. It'd be really cool if we just introduced them. I don't know, man. That seems to be the only reason.
I wanted our Mordo. One of the things I was the most interested in about a Doctor Strange sequel was seeing Mordo, who has now decided he's killing off sorcerers at the end of the first Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
I thought it was like, I felt like, oh yeah, we saw Mordo, and then I was like, oh wait, no, we didn't. We didn't really get to see Mordo because our Mordo was in a different dimension and hates Doctor Strange for like different reasons, you know.
Yeah.
It is kind of funny that wherever he goes, everybody hates his ass because of some pompous shit that he's done, though.
I love that. Yeah. I don't know. I did enjoy Mordo's Tyler Perry cornrows. I mean, that's like a joke that that Tyler Perry has the worst wigs in all of his movies.
I saw people talking about his hairline and his lace
so
front
weird.
or whatever.
No hair looks like that. So yeah, I don't know. But honestly,
I don't know. Mine kind
I had
of
a lot of fun. Just like glued on hair at the top. It just went too far down. So anyway, but I'm not gonna lie to you, man. For the most part, I thought this movie was fun as hell. I kind of felt like this woman portrayed in this film was like from an 80s movie. Like it feels like there was not a lot of like, this was like before people were checking writers on like, man, this is a one-dimensional woman. This is you can make this a lot more full and like, people have dimensions to them, and it feels like
a multiverse.
like a multiverse. So many.
Well, I mean, like let's say this. Everything Everywhere All at Once is out in theaters at the same time, and it is an excellent multiverse movie that admittedly is a half hour longer than this movie, but it actually does all this stuff with like, it makes the different realities. You see different realities. They're ridiculous and poignant, and you see how they all add up to this one, the thread across the different multiverses is very touching and poignant. Like, so in that sense, that movie is a much better exploration of what people thought they would get from this, which is like all these different weird worlds that are different in key ways, and you kind of see the difference of them. The Doctor Strange movie is much more of a Doctor Strange adventure that uses the multiverse as the backdrop. I would say that like maybe if you see both movies back to back, you'll get the full picture. You know what I mean? Like, but I did find myself thinking it's very strange that there's another multiversal movie out right now that is an indie film that does more with the head trippy concepts than the Marvel movie directed by Sam Raimi does. And I guess that doesn't speak too well of Doctor Strange, but I really do think that where it makes it up for me is that there are a lot of, like you said, Ronald, fun points in this story. And it's like often with Marvel, we kind of think they're going to reinvent the wheel when, they're in the business of making, at worst, pretty good movies and shows. It is nice when they manage to knock one out of the park, though, because it makes this investment feel like it has been going somewhere. But all we really care about, right, is that just give us something good, and everything else will kind of fall into place. So.
Give us a good story, man. Give us a good story. That's all we want, man. That's all we want.
So is Wanda dead?
No way.
And I don't just mean multiverse. I don't mean like getting another version of her. I mean, like, you think our Wanda is going to come back somehow?
I mean, again, if that's true and she doesn't, if that happens and she doesn't, this is just more of a problem.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
I think Agatha's going to bring her back. I think Agatha's going to bring her back. I think that like the cool part about Agatha's character is she seemed to have more of a understanding of what the powers do. And I would love to see Agatha and Wanda kind of begrudgingly become friends, and
some tag team action.
Yeah, and Wanda pick up some of the control over the dark hold and stuff like that, because she has those black tips. Man. She's had the dark hold on her. So
I thought it was cool when she was reaching out of the puddles, the reflections. I thought that was a cool thing. And you mentioned the kind of creepy scenes, Ronald. The scene of her like in the weird mirror room where she figured out how to escape from that, and then the scene later where she's chasing him down the tunnels. There were some legitimately kind of scary moments in that. And I don't quite agree with people who are like, this is way too harsh and way too scary, and they should watch what they put out with a PG-13 rating. I feel like it still felt PG-13, except for the one that when someone's head shape changes, that feels kind of R. But that was the one moment that felt like, you're not used to seeing a destroyed head in a PG-13 movie.
Yeah.
But it still felt marvelly. If people are saying this is a horror movie, they're out of their minds.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there anything else? Any cameos or let's talk about cut scenes or mid-credit scenes. I think that the end of this movie it feels strong until you get to the mid-credit scene, because the movie ends. It's a scene of Doctor Strange walking down the street, and then he kind of looks up and he has the extra eye, and it's like the music sting comes in and he screams, and it says directed by Sam Raimi, and I was like, yes, what a great Sam Raimi ending. And then a few minutes later, you get a scene with another sunny day. Doctor Strange is walking down a different street. It's kind of the same street, but not really. And then something else happened. It just felt like it totally undercut the ending we just saw. And I don't think what you gained from that mid-credit scene, I think sometimes these scenes, I don't even think people that know the comics are that excited to see some of these scenes. But I think a scene that means nothing to most of the people in the audience, I don't know why those scenes are there. What do you guys think of that? Like the fact that was even there. Like, did it add anything for you to know that the adventures continue? That's all that scene tells you.
I love that the character's coming. That's coming. I love her. Yeah, who doesn't like Charlize Theron?
But it's like Harry Styles coming in the Eternals.
Yeah,
they do casting announcements in the middle of credits now. That just is a weird way to use those scenes. I just think the scene could have been staged.
Almost as weird as introducing John Krasinski and then killing him.
Immediately, just like
that scene is, I mean, just purely for having Charlize in the MCU, I was like, I'm a fan of hers.
Yeah, me too.
But again, it's like more, but what's the purpose? What's the story? I mean, they're definitely playing into this whole, there definitely ties to like the Loki of it all and like what happened in that series.
Yeah.
And these incursions, even like with No Way Home, like it seems to be, to me, like that's going to be, I mean, I hope so, because otherwise I don't know what the point of it all is like those incursions seem to be the spine that is not very clear yet. For like what's going to go forward in this next phase or two of the MCU, and maybe even some of that pops up in Thor. I don't know, but like it definitely seems like those incursions are going to have a bigger role in the next phase once they kind of get a little clearer, what's going to happen. But it's cool to see her, but kind of
I just wish the scene had different lighting and not look like it was shot like, oh, hey, just put a different outfit on Benedict Cumberbatch and have him walk around the corner in a different way. It just felt so much like what we had just seen at the end of the movie that it was weird. And then, of course, the last moment is the Bruce Campbell cameo, and that's what I wanted to say. Is I think it's hilarious that people were speculating who he's going to play in this movie, and the answer is Pizza Papa.
Yeah.
That it's like something that couldn't mean anything to anybody at all. And there was even like hype starting around that. And it was like, I just thought that was ridiculous. Like that to me felt like they could have put him in a significant part. It's almost like the intention was to let's deliberately avoid like casting him as some character that people have heard of. And also the name Pizza Papa, it does have that alliterative, quality that like a superhero name would have. So I thought there was some humor in that. But it's rare that they do that now and have just a scene at the end that's like a humorous tag. I don't think they know what to do with these end credit scenes anymore, frankly. And I think that it's weird to wait through the credits and know that everyone's going to be kind of scratching their heads, rather than like, you know what I mean? Rather than being sent out with this feeling that you want them to have, which seems to be that's the point.
They become less about like teases for what's coming, and that's what I'm like. It's consistent with a concern of like maybe a not clear vision of what's coming. They're using these scenes to like introduce new characters, or in No Way Home to like allow Sony to promote their own Spider-Verse, or just they just don't feel very connected at all. Like consistently, that's a problem. I think that's a part of the problem, is that like they don't maybe don't know what to do with them anymore because they have so many ways to tell these stories now with the Disney Plus of it all. And these teasers at the end, these like mid and post credit sequences, like people still want them to do that, but I don't feel like they're using them for that anymore. They're using the shows and all these movies to do it.
Yeah.
But I really haven't been wowed by like a credit sequence for I don't know how long.
I think the last one that really added much for me. I mean, back to Moon Knight. I thought that wasn't.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was a cool scene. That was an example of a scene that actually adds to the ending of the thing you just saw.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's probably
that's rare nowadays for this to have those. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Did Spider-Man have any good ones?
Just the Venom thing, like the Venom at the bar going back to his world,
which is like,
But he leaves a piece of the symbiote here, which is like, okay, Disney Marvel, you have a piece of Venom floating around at this bar somewhere.
Well, I just think the best ones are either the jokes or the like for instance the shawarma scene. That's one of the best ones because it was after the Avengers. It felt nice to see them having a little quiet moment. But I think that I don't know, very quickly they just become obligatory, and it's hard to remember like when they really felt like something. I guess at the end of Spider-Man No Way Home, it was cool getting basically a trailer for Doctor Strange. So maybe that's their best shot, is just give us a good trailer for whatever the next thing is, and we'll feel like we waited around for something. But to me, it feels like you feel that the lack of interest in them. Like when you wait through the credits to get to the scene, you kind of feel everyone go, okay, and get up and walk out. It's not like this super fun, exciting thing.
Yeah.
Which just means why do them? It's like now they're really just doing them because, like you said, Steve, it's expected.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing. Yeah, I don't know. That's all I got on DS2.
That's all the Marvel that we are going to talk about.
Yeah.
Anybody watch anything else they want to mention quickly?
Yeah, I just wanted to before we pack it out here. I wanted to just mention if you're not watching We Own This City on HBO or HBO Max, please try to give it a shot, especially if you're a fan of John Barenthal, Baltimore stories, even if it's not shedding the most positive light on the city or its police department. Just great series on HBO right now. 6 parts. Been able to see it all, thankfully. And I think it's just really incredible TV right there. I feel like not a lot of people are talking about it, so I wanted to just mention that on the podcast. You guys have something you want to mention?
I'll second that.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'll talk about everything next week. I'm good, because that's a good one to end it on. Because that's a strong show that everybody needs to be watching right now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I definitely. I think they're on like episode 4. Yeah. We're going into episode 4 after this podcast comes out. So, it's just about past the halfway point. So you have time to catch up before the finale in a couple weeks. But again, that's on HBO Max. Yeah. All right, cool, guys. Well, that'll wrap up this episode. We'll be back next week, hopefully, with another new one. Movieschmovie.com is the website. You can hit that site up and jump into whatever podcast platform if you'd like to subscribe to the audio version of the podcast, or you can link over to our YouTube channel if you want to subscribe to the video that we provide, or that Ronald thankfully puts together for this podcast. And if you subscribe in any way, whether it's audio or on YouTube, or follow us there, if you can leave any kind of review, comment on some of the videos, anything like that for engagement, to let people know about the podcast, anything like that helps just kind of get the word out. Yeah, that's all I got. Are you guys good?
Yeah.
I just want to mention to people that if they like us, and if they've listened this far into this episode, then surely they like us at least a little bit. Maybe they stopped liking us at some point during this episode. But if you do like us, you should know that this week you can hear us talking about the latest episode of Better Call Saul over on my Saul Searching podcast, which is available at the FYIZ podcast feed. So just search for FYIZ. Like it's the call letters for a station, wherever you look for podcasts, and you'll see the Saul Searching Show. And the most recent one, which deals with episode 5 of the 6th season of Better Call Saul, has 2 very cool guests on it. So thanks again, guys, for doing that. That was a fun episode.
Oh, it was fun as hell.
It was a blast.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. All right, guys. Well, I'll see you next week, and we'll be back here for episode 340 because that's the next one.
Yes.
In the series. All right, guys. As always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.